New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs maintains a sex ed presentation was not vetted and says an investigation is now underway. Higgs posted on X that this presentation was not part of the New Brunswick curriculum and the content was not flagged for parents in advance. My office has been told by Department of Education officials that this was supposed to be a presentation on HPV. However, the group shared material well beyond the scope of an HPV presentation. He says the Quebec-based sex education group is no longer allowed in New Brunswick schools. Teresa Norris is the founder and president of that group, HPV Global Action. She's the person who delivered the presentation, and she's our guest this morning with her thoughts on these latest accusations and developments. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
First question for me is, do you know who's conducting this investigation?
I'm learning it's the same as you are.
So we don't know whether it's the ministry, the Department of Education, or the Premier's office. They haven't let you know?
No, and I think we need to redirect the narrative on this discussion altogether. I think first addressing what's just been recently said, it struck an important chord with me when he said every parent he's crossed has been shocked. And I agree. It is absolutely shocking sometimes to recognize that as our kids are growing up, at one point as a teenager, there are going to be these important issues that we are all going to have to face. And that's a really difficult space for all parents, including myself as a parent. I've been through it. My kids are in their 20s now, and I'm still not done. There is a lot of concern circulating around about what our children are being exposed to, where they're getting their information. I think what also is concerning is what's preoccupying our teens, where they're spending their time, the kinds of questions that are predominating their thoughts. And I think that can be an overwhelming, shocking thing to be like, wow, how did we end up in that space where we are now having to teach our teens about relationships and human sexuality? Let's be clear, we have important studies that have been done, particularly by CCAN, that are demonstrating how parents are relieved that there's sexual health education in the curriculum. And across the country, we're adding responsible, evidence-based, vetted, appropriate information to students. And we are being mindful, professionals in this space like myself, and we're a whole host of professionals that are being very respectful to ensure that we're following the curriculum. So I think one of my bigger messages this morning is let's not start politicizing an issue that we should all be working together on.
Agreed. I want to bring up something that the Premier has said as part of this discussion. And again, as a parent, if you've ever had any kind of a conversation with your kids about relationships and sexuality, you know that there's going to be questions that you might not have been prepared to answer, which is why we pass it over to the experts. The presentation that you gave, I understand, is called Healthy Relationships 101. You've described it as an A to Z discussion about relationships and sexuality. The Premier says it was officially decided that the presentation would not delve into anything beyond HPV, and I'm going to quote him directly so I don't misstate. He said, in part, the fact that this was shared shows either improper vetting was done, the group misrepresented itself, or both. It does sound like he's accusing you of maybe trying to sneak in some content that had been previously agreed on. Was there ever an official discussion or decision on content?
So there was several, again, this isn't going to be a I got you moment where anybody's not done their job. Everybody that's been involved in why we're sitting on this conversation right now, we all have had really important conversations. Not only did we have important conversations, really looking and delving into ensuring that we were respecting the curriculum like we do in all of the provinces and all of the places that we visit, there was time spent in looking on what has this presentation done in other areas. This presentation has been done for years, and we're always making sure that it's age appropriate and evidence-based. And I think that that's an important thing for provinces to make sure that it's a good fit for their students and for their teens. And that has been done. So bottom line is everybody went into this knowing that this was always going to be a discussion about healthy relationships and how, yes, this starts off with a very important personal story that I share about losing somebody very important to me to cervical cancer, which is caused by HPV. And then it's the beginning of a very important conversation about how HPV has everything to do with relationship, because of how contagious this virus is and how we come into contact with it, skin-to-skin contact, and what that means, because of when we're sexually active, we are going below the belt, we are doing things, and it evolves into a bigger conversation. There's a reason why it's called Healthy Relationships 101. But yes, it most definitely starts with a very important story about HPV, the virus, and it leads into the discussion about consent and boundaries, and all of those important issues that have been highlighted about STIs and pregnancy prevention. But again, getting back to the more important point, this is a difficult space. This is a hard conversation that we're all having, and he's very right, the Premier. This is a conversation that's happening across the country, and am I ever glad that we're actually shining a light on the importance of actually talking about, yes, it's a hard conversation to be having, and aren't we glad that the majority of the parents and the majority of the people that are actually having an opinion today are sitting there saying, yes, these are valid questions, but what's more important is how are we answering those questions? How are we approaching them? Are we being inappropriate? No, we are not. We are being evidence-based. We are answering at that moment in that child's life at a time when they're asking that question, and we're giving them an appropriate answer so they're not going to go online. You've just done a couple of newscasts before me about all this misinformation and how it's getting us into trouble, and all of this navigating that teens are having to do online. And again, what's more important, that we don't include it in the curriculum and we decide to take a second look at whether this is quality information, and are we going to categorically decide that kids shouldn't have access and teens shouldn't have access to these important answers to the questions that they are asking? No, the answer is we let the Ministry of Education do their job. Everybody has done their job. They've included in their curriculum, and particularly in New Brunswick, these are established learning areas, and the core interest to achieving that is to support the knowledge and skills to help students and teens make informed decisions about being sexually active. So yes, is it a hard conversation? We're having it. Should teens, try to have as much open conversations with their parents and caregivers, and should this be a shared discussion? Absolutely. Everybody has a place for this discussion. I think that parents and caregivers have a role. I think that we should be respecting the curriculum that's being delivered in schools. And let's remember again that we have some important rates of increased teens pregnancies, particularly in New Brunswick, where it's twice the national rate for teens 15 to 19 years old, their pregnancy rates right now. How do we address that? Do we address that by not talking about pregnancy prevention? Or do we address that appropriately, like we're already doing with the Ministry of Education in all of the provinces? Each of the provinces is all taking care of this in their own unique way, and New Brunswick is not an exception. And what we've been doing in New Brunswick for years has been deemed as not only a good presentation that encompasses all of those really important learning objectives, it's having outcomes that are making it that more and more areas have wanted to do this presentation because it speaks to the values of New Brunswick.
Teresa, I want to thank you for coming on this morning. It's important to hear from you directly, and so we appreciate your time this morning. We should also mention now that we did reach out to Premier Higgs' office for an explanation of why the decision was made to ban HPV Global Action, and for more information on the investigation. We did not receive a reply in time for this segment.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.